Hey, everybody, this is Lauren Delisa Coleman, and we are still at the Blackstar Film Festival, bringing you every and any interview that we can get with all these wonderful filmmakers. It's so exciting, just so much talent that is coming out of and through this festival. And I am very fortunate right now to have not one, but two filmmakers, female filmmakers with me right now who are joining me to talk about their latest films. So first of all, let me welcome both Ingred Prince and Aizhaneya Carter, who are the filmmakers behind the short Gales. Thank you guys for, sharing a few moments, because I know you're back to back on all the fabulous interviews. Everybody wants you. So let's start, I guess, first, as we usually do, with just kind of a brief synopsis of the film.
So Gales is a pilot episode, hopefully a web series, but we're submitting as a short film right now. And in this episode, we meet Nurse Indigo, Reese, and Veronica. And Nurse Indigo has a proposition for a very steamy weekend and goes through some questionable ethical lengths at work in order to make the switch.
How did you two kind of come together?
Well, first I want to say that was a beautiful synopsis, Ingrid. I love that. So we actually met in Philly. So we're basically on our old stomping grounds right now. We're in West Philadelphia on Lenape land, I would like to say, that is shared by like Drexel and Penn. So
Okay.
we went to Penn together, and we were in the same theater company, 4A, the African American Arts Alliance, which we produce shows by and about people of the African diaspora. Mm-hmm. I think the first show that we worked on together, I was costume designing. And you were starring in the show as an actor. Yeah,
I remember that.
And from then, just through school, it ended up being that actually you ended up being the president of the theater company. Yeah. And then the next year I was the president. Mm-hmm. And so it was really our time at Penn in the arts, specifically focused on arts by and about Black folk, where we like bonded and formed this working relationship, this creative relationship.
I think that's so great. And actually, I have two sisters who live in West Philadelphia now and aren't far, from there. So how do you guys feel that Penn has kind of impacted your, I guess, I mean, you're more than, filmmakers. So just kind of your approach just to creativity overall? Because, I mean, I don't think we think of Penn. I mean, I went to Columbia, so we don't typically think of Ivy League schools as, kind of cool creative outlets, right? So, to come out of that, unless maybe it's Yale, right, for that reputation, but to come out of that, I think that you probably have to have a very strong vision and really find your cluster there, right? Because at least back in the day when I was at Columbia, it was all about either, medical school, pre-med, or like Wall Street, right? And if you wanted to do something else, you had to find that, right? And find your way through that. Did you find that as well at Penn these days, or is it kind of different now?
Well, I graduated 5 years ago, and
that's not that long ago, huh?
It's not that long ago. But for us, 4A was like our number one outlet. They were putting on the shows that we were interested in. They were talking about the things that we were interested in, and it was just one of those environments where they let you play in different departments. I was a medical major. I was a nursing major at Penn. So even though my main focus was doing that, I still found the arts.
I love that. So like you're using like both parts of your brain, as they say, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Side and all the more maybe mathematical or logical side. I wanted to ask you about that because I'm assuming that this film came out of not the unethical part, but that the character goes through. But of course, since you're, as you kind of put it, a retired RN, did you pulled from that or experiences from that part of your life to create this film?
Absolutely. Gales, at least this episode of Gales, is a tribute to your early 20-something when you're fresh out of college and entering into the workforce, and some of the politics and growing pains that comes from that.
Right.
So yeah, my experience there at the bedside at a young age, making really difficult life or death decisions or life or death mistakes, leads to this, lends to this literature, lends to this piece of art.
Oh, interesting. And I love how you guys have decided to use the short film with the intent of, almost an original, right, for a potential like little streaming platform, ideally. Maybe in the spirit of maybe an Ether Ray type of approach, but not really, right? What made you kind of decide to do that as opposed to going right to, YouTube or what have you? Because it's obviously more, I would think, more challenging developing and creating and editing a short rather than, okay, let's just hurry up and do something, for a few minutes online and keep doing it and see how it takes, right? So how did you decide to be able to really take this approach and remain committed to it?
Well, I'll start with, I feel like who we are as people and what I've seen in our lives holistically, we're very much so, we don't want to move too fast. We don't want to move too fast. Like we want to move, we want to get it right. And with Gales, with it being our first project, truly our first project where Ingrid had an idea and wrote a script and I said, I want to produce that, and figuring it out, we didn't want to move faster than what was than like our artistic inspiration, faster than where it was guiding us. We wanted to make sure we had the time and the opportunity to partner with other artists whose work we'd seen and who we admired, to work with a part of our production team, actually everyone on our production team went to Penn and was a part of 4A in some capacity, including the co-director, Tashay Williams, the producer, co-producer, Sydney Rodriguez, and associate producer, Kai Cornegay. So we wanted to, that was another part of it I'll add, is with having so many folks dispersed all over, we were all over the East Coast at that point in time. We just needed more time in order to fully develop the project as we saw it in our vision. So I think that a lot of it, I'll attribute a lot of the time and patience we took in making sure that we created we told the story we wanted to tell within the vision that we had for it. I'll attribute it to a lot, just sort of how we move generally, where it's like, I want it to come at the right time. I want it to be the right moment. I want it to all align exactly the way that the universe wants it to for us. And I think with Gales in particular, that meant take a little bit more time, understand who you are as an artist through this project, understand who you want to be, understand with whom you want to work. And I'll say it paid off, seeing as though we're back here, like I said, on our old stomping grounds in Philadelphia. I'm also a Philly native. So
Are you? I was going to ask.
Yeah, it's a huge deal for me to be able to screen our show tomorrow in my city as well. So yeah, I think we moved correctly.
I also think that I wasn't going to make cheap films. And medical dramas are incredibly expensive. And I wanted, if we're going to make a medical drama that centers on Black women and centers on nurses, then I wanted to have the right aesthetic. I wanted to have the right music, the right resources.
Right.
To do that, you need money. So
that's great. And I mean, I think, that also is, kind of a perfect segue into the next part, which is how did you raise the funds for it? I mean, did that come out of, I don't know, relationships and contacts at 4A, or did you have to start over from scratch, or how did that kind of work for you?
Actually, we just have a really good relationship with the communities in Baltimore. That's where I live. And that's where I was working as a nurse for the first time for about 2.5, 3 years. And so the Soul Ants Innovative Fund out of Johns Hopkins gave us money to create this short. And then I also have my own personal funds.
That's so great though, with Johns Hopkins. Congrats.
Yeah, thank you.
Was it challenging having to put together whatever materials you needed to be able to show? I mean, because I know in a lot of instances, just the grant application itself can be very daunting. I was a part of a panel discussion about this just in terms of tech, but it's the same thing, right? Whether it's a startup or a film, it's something that does not exist yet that you're bringing to light. And so, just the grant like application process itself can be like, oh my God, like it's another project in and of itself. Did you find that with Johns Hopkins, or was it more streamlined?
It was pretty streamlined, but we were applying to a lot of funding. So
really good for you.
Yeah, we're not afraid of writing. Like we're not afraid
but just like the timing that the time rather, I should say, that it takes and the intensity, because you can't work on your project at the time when you are seeking funding. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it definitely is that. Like you can't do too many things at once. It's not necessarily the act of writing it, it's just finding the time to do it as you're preparing for a multitude of things creatively, and also a multitude of things personally in your life as you're balancing.
Right. Do you guys have any tips for filmmakers in terms of, kind of management around those types of things where, like you said, you're trying to do a number of different things and also take care of yourself, at the same time? How did you guys kind of create that balance as you were doing this? Because it's also like a longer process. You don't know exactly when funding is coming. Part of it might come in and then you still need more. So you have to really have a lot of stamina, right? So how did both of you kind of approach that? And did you share like the grant, like writing responsibilities? Like, was it balanced, or were you like, Ingrid, just do it and let me know how it goes, I'm going to be over here doing this other part of the film?
No, it was definitely, we both contributed ideas to the grant writing process. I think it was pretty balanced.
Mm-hmm. If I was making the budget, you were answering
the narrative questions.
Yeah. So it was certainly, I would say we'd certainly balanced the work in terms of, and continue to, because that's the other thing to what you're saying. I think this idea around like sustainability, how do you sustain yourself throughout the process? Because there's pre-production, there's the applying for the money, there's securing the funding, and then you get into production, which is what we all know, but then there's post-production, which part of it is editing the film and creating the film, but also another part of it is applying. Now you're submitting to festivals. Now you're beginning to pitch your idea. And how do you manage to sustain yourself throughout that time? Because at this point, like you've done all of this work and it's still not necessarily generating income for you just yet. So
right.
That's what I'm hearing you ask.
Yes.
Around. I'll say, I feel like both of us, we've become really great at cultivating the life and finding those moments. Like, so like right now I'm a student I'm getting my MFA in acting and directing at Brown Trinity right now, which is like, it gives me my health insurance, and on top of that, I'm also like an admin at a private equity real estate firm in New York right now. So it's really a matter of like cobbling it together, because we're getting there. We're getting to the place where our work will be able to also sustain our lives fully. But Gales has been, to get to this point, it's been 3 years in the making, and to be able to hold on to that vision and to see it through. In my case, I've had to have a lot of underlying projects, a lot of underlying work, and then build in time for Gales. I think we have our weekly Sunday.
We've talked for like 2 years, every day, Sunday at 2.
Yes.
It works well for us. We were making a film over Zoom before it was fashionable to do anything over Zoom.
Interesting. So now what about, the vision that you have for Gales? Are any of the forthcoming episodes, are they written yet? Are you kind of waiting to see what more of the reaction is to this? Or how are you guys kind of deciding what timing should be creatively, next? Sorry?
Yeah. We definitely want to see how Blackstar rides out, see the audience's reactions. We have a lot of ideas about what we want to put into episodes. And we also want to create a pretty sturdy writer's room. because we understand that this perspective, this point of view, as far as like being a Black nurse in America, pre and post pandemic, is incredibly precious. And then also just the Black existence in America and Baltimore City is incredibly precious. So we want as many people to write with us. Like, we want to give Gales the full treatment that it deserves. So that's the next step. I usually work as a travel nurse, but I'm taking some time off just to attend to that and take the project to the next level.
Right, right.
It's just like one of those babies that just needs more attention if we're going to make it episodic. And I'm like willing to invest that.
I think that that's great. And I think it's also such perfect timing because you started working on this obviously before the pandemic.
Yeah.
And I don't think, not since back in the day with Julia, have we seen really any type of nurse of any type of color, inside of, something that is fictional.
Yeah.
Or non-fictional. And then, the pandemic comes along and then you start to see like these real life kind of faces, but it's still not placed within a context, okay, there's ER and those type of other shows, but not really focused on this one, particular character. Yeah. So, I just think it's really interesting timing how you both are coming together for this story, presenting this particular voice at this particular moment in time. You know what I mean? I'm sure people will be like, oh, did you get the idea from the pandemic? And you'll be like, no, we were like way ahead of that. It just happened to coincide, right?
Yeah. And I hope people would be more interested
yes,
because frontline workers more than anything have experienced the most trauma from the pandemic by being on the front lines and seeing people die every day. I was on the front lines on the pandemic for about 8 months between LA, Dallas, and DC. So
oh my God.
As a travel nurse. So that like post-production was just about wrapping up when the pandemic started last March, and then I had to work. So that's another reason why we're taking our time with Gales, is because I just had to work. I had to work the pandemic. So when the industry stopped, I also had to stop and work my other industry. So
it's just like amazing, because I think just the other night on CNN, it wasn't either last night or the night before, they were interviewing it happened to be a woman of color who was a nurse, who was saying sometimes she would just sit in her car and cry before she went into the hospital to work that day because it was just so overwhelming, day in and day out, whether it was the hours or the heaviness of working within all that, because you guys are still only human at the end of the day. You know more about the human body, but you still have to deal with the emotion. So, just being able to kind of hear that from somebody, but she still looked sane. So you're kind of like, guys, they teach you like how to not to show it or something. I don't know. But I think too, this kind of, I'm just going to say already, it's a series that you're working on, will also show kind of like the human side of, that frontline worker, because I don't think we've seen that.
Yeah. And they're young 20-something girls or young 20-something femme-identifying individuals. So there are so many things in life in general happening outside the hospital. So we're going to definitely work on the intersections of that as well.
Yes, that's great. So anything else like that you want to add? I mean, any particular challenges during this that you overcame that you would say, this is a great tip to pass on to other filmmakers? Or, do you feel like you already, like you're still working through many of the things?
I feel really blessed, first of all, because I was able to make this project with like my very best friends.
So nice.
Yeah. And like, it's really, it's really nice because I now sometimes, work for Disney or other corporations, and it's just different, So yeah, it's just different. So it's really nice working with your friends, having that familial aspect. And it's also nice that, everyone that works with us believes in us and never had a doubt that we could figure this out. It's our first time making film. And like, now I'm looking at it, I'm like, oh, we're going to make so much more and so much better film. Like, I'm so excited, like, for us to grow in our trajectory. Right. And I don't know, I just have so much hope and faith in this, and like really, really like soaking in all the knowledge and possibilities.
I love that. Aizhaneya, do you want to add anything to that?
Yes. And I agree totally. We get to have so many wonderful adventures.
Yeah.
I will, and I think you already began to highlight this with talking about your experience, Ingrid, of working the pandemic, before the pandemic hit, of being a travel nurse and that alongside writing and creating and editing. And I mean, Ingrid had hands everywhere and in everything. And I think it's really important for artists to really like allow your entire life to inspire you, allow your entire life to cultivate your artistry. You're a nurse, or you were a nurse, and sometimes you have the opportunity to go back to that. But like you use that you used and will continue to use that to inspire the trajectory of Gales. You mentioned like the pandemic hitting, and we've actually talked about like, wow, that's like wild that this has happened for many reasons, but to know like, okay, maybe a season 2 or season 3 will be able to showcase that experience of being in it. The one story I remember that you told me while you were working, or one thing we talked about was like how hard it is to save a life, and like how like labor intensive it is to save a life, to have to like pick someone up and heave into their body and like breathe life back into them. And that's just something I, as someone who isn't a nurse, like I'm like, oh yeah, saving a life is hard. But I think being able to really showcase and understand that, to really be able to understand, okay, like you're crying in your car because it's overwhelming, but you still go in every day and you you still save someone's life. Like that is, to me, that is just, it's truly magical. And I think that being able to bring that magic, like that humanity and the magic of what you all do, and the respect that like frontline workers deserve into this story, into the lives of so many people, matters greatly to me. And I also mentioned, like, I'm in school right now pursuing acting, and I produced Gales and like love producing. And so for me, I'm also like, oh, how does my experience acting now influence the way that I write characters, the way that I want to see them on screen, the way that stories impact me, and therefore the way that I, as a producer, will push those stories forward. So I really encourage, like, allow your holistic life experience to just move through you and influence you and change your art.
I love that. And I couldn't think of a better like kind of point to close, because that's so inspirational. Do either of you have anything else you'd want to add?
Just make sure you check out Gales.
Of course. Got a promo.
You can follow the Instagram at Gales, GALES .the.series.
Great. Yes, everybody can like kind of be part of the journey as it becomes a series. I'm already saying it's a series. I'm already going to say it's a hit. So.
No, speak it into existence. We need all the operations.
Absolutely. I can't thank you both enough, and I hope that the rest of the festival is great for you. Continued success. And everybody, thank you so much for watching. This has been another episode of the Inside series right here on film.io, and I'm Lauren Delisa Coleman.